All right, so we are looking at CC2 Section 2.2.3, specifically number 2-66. Okay, we have a bit of a word problem here to read through. So it says on Saturday, Stella worked for 2 hours helping her mother around the house. She spent a third of her time doing laundry, a fourth of her time cleaning, and the rest of her time working on the yard. How much of her time was spent in the yard? Show all your work. Okay, use a diagram if it helps. So there's a few ways to look at this. She spent 2 hours, so I can use that information and figure out how much time she spent doing each of these. And then I can then from there find the remainder of time, and that would be the rest of her time working in the yard. I could find the fraction of the time based on, I know these two fractions. So let's look at both directions. So if I were to draw a diagram, because it said use a diagram to help, and I like diagrams. If I drew a diagram, I'm going to use a circle as representing all of her time. So we know that 1/4, right? 1/4 of the time. So this is a fourth. A fourth of the time was cleaning. So that part is cleaning. And then it said a third, and to draw a third, I think about like that as a third. So 1/3 of her time was doing laundry. So the question is, what fraction of time is left? What fraction of time? And then that fraction of time represents working in the yard. So if I look at that idea of having a circle representing all of her time, I can then create an equation that would be 1/4 plus 1/3 plus some fraction of time has to equal all of her time, which is 1, right? 1 whole, a whole, if we're talking about fractional pieces. So in order to do this, I need to get a common denominator to figure out what that fraction of piece would be. So this is going to be, let's see, common denominator would be 12. So I want to convert 1/4 to something over 12. It would be multiply top and bottom by 3. So that's 3/12 is 1/4. And then I need to take the 1/3 and something over 12, and it'd be multiplying by 4 top and bottom. So I'd get 4/12. So the question is now I can look at this question mark as something 12th, right? What part would that to give me the 1 whole, and the 1 whole would be 12 over 12. So if I convert all of that to have common denominators, it's easier to see what part is missing. So I have a 3 plus 4 plus something has to equal 12. Well, 3 plus 4 is 7. So the remainder would be 5. So I'd have 5/12 would be what would be the fraction of time she spent in the yard based on looking at that circle diagram. So I could say, I could have the answer be 5/12 of her time was spent working in the yard. That would be one acceptable answer when we look at a fraction of time. Now, if I wanted to actually utilize this information, the 2 hours, to figure out exactly how much time, I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so let's go that direction. So that being said, 2 hours helping her mom around the house. So that's the total time. So the first part we know is 1/3 of it was doing laundry. So the question would be, what is 1/3 of 2 hours? Right? So that would be my initial piece to look at 1/3 of 2 hours. Well, in order to do this and come up with fractional time, instead of thinking about hours, it might be better for us to think about minutes. So how many minutes are an hour? Well, there's 60 minutes. So I would say instead of 2 hours, I'd say 120 minutes. Because that math, we can look at 1/3 of 120. So 1/3 of 120, that's the same thing as saying 1/3 times 120. And when you're multiplying a whole number times a fraction, put the whole number over 1, multiply straight across, you get 120 over 3, and that divides, and you end up with 40. So what did that tell me? So 40 minutes was spent on laundry. So I know how much time she spent on laundry. She spent specifically 40 minutes. Okay. Now, the other piece that was up here is it said that 1/4 of her time was spent cleaning. Okay. So I'm going to come back down and do the same thing. 1/4 of 120 to find out how much time was spent cleaning, right? 1/4 of an amount is the same thing as saying 1/4 times 120. Take that 120, put it over 1. When you're multiplying a fraction times a whole number, multiply straight across, 120 over 4. Do the division, 120 divided by 4 is 30. So what does that tell me? That 30 minutes was spent on cleaning. So 30 minutes was spent on cleaning. So what do we see? We see that together, 70 minutes was spent on laundry and cleaning. And it said that the rest of her time was spent in the yard. So to figure out what the rest of the time is, if 120 is the total, so the rest of her time would be 120 minus 70, right? So if 120 is the total minutes, and we know that 40 was on laundry, 30 was on cleaning, together that's 70, I would take 120 minus 70 to get 50. So that tells me that 50 minutes was spent in the yard. So we can find the exact time, or what I found earlier, which was the fractional time, which was 5/12 of her time. There you go.